Hey friends, welcome back to our channel. Today we discover the top 10 most corrupt countries in the world in 2024. Corruption, the abuse of entrusted power for personal gain, continues to be a significant global challenge. It erodes trust in institutions, hinders economic development, and disproportionately harms the poor and vulnerable. Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index, CPI, is a leading indicator of perceived corruption worldwide. Here we delve into the top 10 most corrupt countries according to the 2024 CPI, exploring the root causes and potential consequences of corruption in each nation. To subscribe to our channel and stay updated with more insightful content like this, simply click the subscribe button below the video. Join our community and never miss out on our latest uploads. Let's delve deeper into the top 10 most corrupt countries in the world in 2024. 10. Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan consistently ranks among the most corrupt countries. Authoritarian rule, state control of resources, a weak rule of law, limited media freedom, and a culture of impunity create a vicious cycle of corruption. Those in power exploit the system for personal gain, hindering economic development and impacting the well-being of citizens. Little to no consequences for corrupt practices further embolden those in power and discourage investment. 9. Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea, a resource-rich nation ruled by the same president for over 4 decades, exemplifies the resource curse. Despite vast oil wealth, the majority of the population lives in poverty. The ruling family and their associates are accused of embezzling state funds and manipulating oil revenues for personal gain. This resource mismanagement not only squanders the nation's potential for development, but also fuels resentment among the population, who see little benefit from the country's riches. This situation highlights the importance of transparent and accountable governance in managing resource wealth. Equitable distribution of resource revenue and investment in key sectors like education and healthcare are crucial for breaking the cycle of poverty and fostering sustainable development. 8. Haiti. Haiti, a nation repeatedly struck by natural disasters and political instability, faces a significant challenge in tackling corruption. Weak institutions, lacking the capacity to enforce laws and manage public resources effectively, create an environment where corruption thrives. A lack of transparency in government processes further fuels public mistrust and hinders efforts to hold officials accountable. Reconstruction efforts after natural disasters are often marred by allegations of mismanagement and embezzlement. This diverts resources away from critical areas like education, healthcare, and infrastructure development, hindering long-term economic growth and perpetuating the cycle of poverty. Breaking this cycle requires not only addressing the immediate needs of the population, but also strengthening institutions and implementing measures to promote transparency and accountability. 7. Nicaragua. Nicaragua's democratic backsliding under President Ortega has been accompanied by a surge in corruption. The consolidation of power by Ortega and his allies has weakened checks and balances, allowing them to manipulate institutions for personal benefit. This state capture involves using their political influence to control key institutions and resources, stifling economic competition and limiting opportunities for ordinary citizens. The crackdown on independent media and civil society further undermines transparency and accountability. Without a free press and a vibrant civil society to hold the government accountable, corruption can thrive unchecked. This not only harms the economy, but also erodes public trust in democratic institutions. 6. North Korea. North Korea's totalitarian regime operates under a shroud of secrecy, making it difficult to assess the full extent of corruption within the nation. However, experts believe it is deeply ingrained within the system. The regime's absolute control over the economy allows for the diversion of resources for personal gain by those in power. This includes funding for nuclear and missile programs, further complicating international efforts towards denuclearization. The lack of independent media and freedom of speech restricts the flow of information and hinders efforts to understand and combat corruption. This lack of transparency and accountability allows corrupt practices to flourish with minimal risk of exposure or consequences. 5. Yemen. Yemen's brutal civil war and ongoing humanitarian crisis present a complex picture of corruption. warring parties are accused of diverting humanitarian aid intended to alleviate the suffering of civilians for their own agendas, further intensifying civilian suffering. Long-standing political instability and a weak central government create opportunities for corruption at all levels, from local officials to militia leaders. Rebuilding Yemen necessitates addressing the underlying causes of corruption, including strengthening institutions and establishing a more accountable and transparent political system. This will be crucial to ensure that resources are used effectively and that the needs of the Yemeni people are prioritized during the reconstruction process. 4. Venezuela. Venezuela, once a wealthy oil-producing nation, has descended into economic and political turmoil due to a toxic combination of mismanagement and rampant corruption. The government's mishandling of the oil sector, the nation's primary source of income, has led to disastrous consequences. Opaque deals and suspected enrichment of powerful figures have resulted in hyperinflation, shortages of basic goods, and a mass exodus of citizens. This economic collapse is further exacerbated by the erosion of democratic institutions and the silencing of dissent. Without checks and balances, the government operates with limited accountability, leaving citizens with few avenues to hold their leaders responsible for the country's decline. 3. Syria. Syria's decade-long civil war has created a dire humanitarian situation and a breeding ground for corruption. The authoritarian regime of President Assad fosters an environment of impunity, where those in power can exploit resources for personal gain with little fear of repercussions. This absolute control allows for war profiteering, where individuals enrich themselves through the sale of arms, smuggling of goods, and manipulation of humanitarian aid. This further exacerbates the suffering of the Syrian people, who are already facing immense hardship due to the ongoing conflict. Rebuilding Syria will require not only physical reconstruction, but also tackling the deep-rooted corruption that plagues the nation and addressing the underlying causes that allowed it to flourish. 2. South Sudan. South Sudan, the world's youngest nation, faces a daunting fight against corruption due to its fragile state. Decades of conflict have left its institutions weak and susceptible to manipulation by politicians and warlords who exploit ethnic divisions for personal gain. This fuels instability and hinders national cohesion, making it difficult to rebuild infrastructure, provide essential services, and foster economic growth. The oil industry, a potential source of wealth for the nation, is marred by opaque deals and mismanagement, benefiting a select few at the expense of the broader population. This resource curse not only squanders potential for development, but also fuels further conflict and instability. 1. Somalia. Somalia's rock-bottom ranking on the CPI reflects a nation deeply scarred by decades of civil war and political instability. Weak institutions, lacking the capacity to enforce laws and deliver essential services, create a breeding ground for corrupt practices. A pervasive culture of impunity allows those in power to exploit resources for personal gain with little fear of being held accountable. Clan loyalties often supersede national interests, further hindering efforts to build a transparent and accountable government. This complex situation makes it incredibly difficult to address the root causes of corruption and diverts resources away from those who need them most, exacerbating the ongoing humanitarian crisis in the country.